Alright, hi guys, Lauren here. Welcome back to my channel. Today I will be showing you how to properly read a poem. Now, I know that some of you might think poems are all about roses and rainbows, but they can be hardcore and violent, like tie things to a chair kind of violent. Poetry can be really hard to interpret, but don't worry. I'll show you some DIYs, tips and tricks on how to make it really easy. Alright, let's get smarter. Here we go. Alright, step 1. Begin by reading the poem aloud many times. With each reading, you should start to understand the poem more. If not, you're doing it wrong. And I recommend that you start all over. It's also encouraged that with each reading, you use a new voice, tone, or accent. This way, you can hear the poem speaking through you. Let the poem talk. And my personal favorite are hand gestures. If you find juxtaposition, well, I think you know what to do. By including hand gestures, it helps connect your body to your mind and allows for a deeper understanding. Here's an example. I will read it 3 times, each in a different voice, tone, or accent. Here's normal. I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox, in which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me. They were delicious, so sweet, and so cold. Alright, now I will try to do it in a British accent. I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox, in which you were probably saving for breakfast. Forgive me. They were delicious, so sweet, and so cold. Alright, now I'm going to do it like a rapper. Yo, I have eaten the plums that were in the icebox that, and you were probably saving for the breakfast. Yo, forgive me. They were so delicious and so sweet, but so cold. Alright, step 2. Read the poem with appropriate breaks or pauses. Since you've all seen my other videos, I know you know about jammin' and jam it. These line breaks and other pauses add meaning to the poem and contribute to the effect the poem has on a reader. When reading a poem with many breaks, be careful to pause at line breaks, punctuation, and spaces. I shall demonstrate how this poem sounds with breaks and without. You should see a large difference. And when I read the poem with breaks, you should feel even more connected to the words and the message of the poem. Spring Poem by Anya K. This is with no breaks. It's spring when the world is tree cool, when the flowers are blooming, it's flower terrific. When the sun is shining, so it's sunshine magical. When I hear the birds chirping, chirp, 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 it's spring. When the universe is singing spring, 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 and we are playing outside at the park and rolling on the hills while shouting, "Wee, spring!" Alright, so that sort of sounded pretty boring and pretty lame. Alright, here's how you should read it. Spring Poem. It's cold when the wind is tree cool, when the flowers are blooming. It's flower terrific. When the sun is shining, it's so sunshine magical. When I hear the birds chirping, chirp, 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 it's spring. When the universe is singing spring, 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 and we are playing outside at the park and rolling on the hills while shouting, "Wee, spring." Don't you hear a difference? I know I feel so much more deeper connected to the spring poem, and it really reminds me of my childhood. Alright, step 3. By annotating the poem, not only do you add to the spiritual connection to the poem you've already established, but a physical connection between you and the poem. This is by far the most beautiful aspect that binds a poem to the reader. When you read poetry, try to annotate on what confuses you, what excites you, and basically everything else on the page. There's always something to be annotated. Alright, obviously, this poem is beautifully annotated. See, don't you feel like you are more connected to the poem and have a better understanding about what it's about? I know I do. Alright, now that you have established a connection on multiple fronts, you can complete step 4. Decide how you feel about the poem. Does it make you angry, sad, happy, or mellow? Is it worth a thumbs up, down, or somewhere in the middle? And what about the poem makes you feel this way? Try to label what makes the poem worth a thumbs down. Here is an emotional poem to help you get a sense for what I mean. It brings tears to my eyes every time I read it. Step 5. Analyze how any drawings add a deeper meaning to the poem. Many famous poets doodle on their poems to add a secret meaning within the words of their poem. On this slide, you can see how the pictures show the author's escalated emotions. Drawings can also be abstract, and that allows the reader to make the interpretation for themselves. For example, in this picture, you might see confusion, chaos, uncertainty, or elephants. Who knows? The reader gets to decide. Step 6. Look at the poem on the page and look closely at the physical shape. Yeah, the physical outline of the poem. It might look like a rock, like a half of a fish, a stick, a ketchup bottle, or a map of Europe. Then, consider how this image might add to the message of the poem. Here, we have a poem about snowman that is shaped like BB-8 from Star Wars. Even I am stumped on how this image adds to the message. With all this in mind, let's continue on to step 7. Guessing the author's purpose for writing this poem. To best explain how to do this, let's look at the poem on the next slide. The poem today starts by listing random items such as kangaroos, pearls, and aspirins. From this list, we already know that the author is easily amused by simple things. The poem continues by saying how everyday things make a poem a surprise, like boom, wow, in your face, and how they have meaning, and how they are strong as rocks. What? Oh my gosh. Wow, folks, I'm stumped by this one. Whoever wrote this must have been high as hell. With that said, whatever you thought the poem meant, you're wrong. See, there's a game that authors like to play with you, and it's how to mess with your head so that you think you're right, but you're wrong. You know, I read a study once that said when students claim the meaning of poems, 97.9% of the time, they're wrong. So for this poem, whatever you think it means, the right answer is probably the opposite of what you're thinking right now. And what sucks is that you'll never know because the author is probably dead or hiding in their room writing abstract poems about their obsession with their cat named Sandy. Like meaning, theme can be a tricky game to play. If you don't already know, and let's be honest, no one really knows what theme is, then it is what the author tries to show about human life or nature. It can be really difficult because you're wrong 99% of the time. And according to another study, you're always going to lose a half a point or something because you didn't quite get it. But worry no more. There are a few universal themes where you're always right. Number 1, life sucks. Number 2, the movies are not an accurate description of any aspect of life. Number 3, there's always someone better than you. Number 4, you were an accident. Number 5,